In the autumn of 1942, as the German U-boat campaign was sinking Allied cargo vessels faster than they could be replaced, the United States launched a shipbuilding operation that German naval planners would later describe as one of the most disorienting facts of the entire war. At the Kaiser shipyard in Richmond, California, a Liberty ship was assembled in 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. To understand why that number matters, you need to understand what a Liberty ship was and how long ships were supposed to take. A Liberty ship was not a small vessel. It was a 481-foot, 14,000-ton cargo freighter capable of carrying 10,800 tons of war materiel, tanks, ammunition, aircraft parts, fuel, food, across an ocean under threat of torpedo attack. Before the war, a merchant ship of that size and complexity typically required 6 to 8 months to build in a conventional shipyard. The design required millions of individual parts. The steel hull alone demanded specialized labor, careful sequencing, and time. Henry Kaiser was not a shipbuilder. He had built the Hoover Dam and the Bay Bridge and the Bonneville Dam, and when the government came to him in 1940 and asked him to build ships, his principal qualification was that he had never been told what was impossible in the shipbuilding industry. He took the approach he had used on everything else. He broke the problem into components, prefabricated the components in inland factories, transported them to the yard, and assembled them at the waterfront rather than building from the keel up in the traditional manner. He trained workers with no shipbuilding experience. He ran his yards around the clock. He paid women and African Americans at the same rate as white male workers, which was not idealism, it was mathematics. At the beginning of 1942, a Liberty ship took an average of 250 days and 1.1 million labor hours to build. By the end of 1943, Kaiser's yards were completing 1 in 42 days and producing 3 ships per day across the network. Then his workers in Richmond decided to prove a point. The SS Robert E. Peary was laid down at Richmond Shipyard No. 3 at 1 minute past midnight on November 8, 1942. 250,000 parts weighing 14 million pounds were assembled on that hull over the following 4.5 days. The ship was launched on November 12, 1942, at 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. The record was a deliberate demonstration. Kaiser's workers had been competing against their own previous bests for months, and the Peary was the culmination of that effort. A coordinated push involving round-the-clock shifts, pre-staged components, and the practiced efficiency of a workforce that had built the same ship dozens of times and had gotten very good at it. The Peary served the war. She made 9 voyages. She was still in service in 1963. The broader production numbers are what German naval planners eventually confronted. The U-boat campaign of 1942 was the most destructive phase of the Battle of the Atlantic. German submarines sank approximately 8 million tons of Allied shipping that year, a pace that, if sustained, threatened to strangle Britain's supply lines entirely. Admiral Dönitz believed that if his submarines could maintain a sinking rate above Allies' replacement rate, the war in the Atlantic could be won. The Allies built 2,710 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945. That is not a misprint. 2,710 ocean-going freighters in 4 years, at an average cost roughly $2 million each, a cost that fell as the yards got faster and more efficient. The total cargo capacity of the Liberty fleet exceeded the total tonnage the U-boats sank during the entire war. Germany built 162 U-boats in the same period. By 1943, the production arithmetic had shifted decisively. The yards were replacing ships faster than the submarines could sink them. The point at which Dönitz's strategy could have worked, the narrow window of 1942, when the sinking rate briefly exceeded the replacement rate, closed when Kaiser's workers solved the production problem with assembly line logic applied to ocean-going ships. The mathematics were the strategy. The strategy worked because the mathematics worked. There is a photograph taken on November 12, 1942, of workers watching the Robert E. Peary slide down the ways at Richmond. They are grinning. They know what they just did, and they know that the number, 4 days, 15 hours, 29 minutes, is going to be written down somewhere and not easily forgotten. They were right about that. German naval planners reviewing Allied production data in 1943 did not, by the available accounts, find the Liberty ship numbers easy to process. The expectation, built on conventional shipbuilding timelines, had been that the Americans could not replace tonnage quickly enough. The Kaiser yards had disproved that expectation with an efficiency that was not theoretical, It was documented, measurable, and running 24 hours a day. A ship in 4 days, 3 ships a day across the fleet of yards, 2,710 ships total. Those numbers ended the Battle of the Atlantic not with a decisive engagement, but with the slower, less dramatic, and more final mechanism of making the enemy's strategy arithmetically impossible. There are many ways to win a war. One of them is to simply build more than the other side can sink. The United States in 1942 decided to build more than the other side could sink. The workers at the Kaiser yards made sure of it.